Okay, don't think that Fowler's Facts hasn't been crunching numbers throughout the break in Supercross. We welcome Clinton Fowler back onto the show, and let's talk SMX playoff scenarios. We've been geeking out actually over all these scenarios. We'll get into them, but first, just refresh the rules to qualify for the playoff in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, Weege. Two ways. You can get the automatic bid by being top 20 in points, combined Supercross and Pro Motocross. That's number one. Number two, you can finish in combined points between 21st and 30th. Those are your two primary ways in. There's one exception. Get a win in either a Supercross main event or Pro Motocross event. That automatically gets you a bid into the LCQs. So there's your two ways off the top, Weege.
All right, so I'm looking at history then. I want to know how to get to 20. That's the first thing I'd be looking at if I was one of these riders on the bubble. Clinton, what's our range? Like, give me that range around the 20 spot.
Yeah, so Daniel, the average points required to get in is going to be 142. That's combined. Now, the range is pretty significant. On the high end of it is 180. So that was last year with Garrett Marchbanks. On the low end, you got Josh Hill with 93 back in 2013. So the simplest way to think about 142 points, it's 5 points per race for the entire year. So pretty consistent amount of points you're going to need to be an automatic bid.
Yeah, you mentioned that low end back in 2013 with Josh Hill getting in with just 93 points or 3 points per race. But you think because riders now know how critical these points are and there's a playoff, you think the number is probably going to trend high in 2023 to get in?
Yeah, I think using the 29 race season instead of the 28 race season is actually going to be a good test. Just because if somebody like a Josh Cartwright or Dean Wilson, you name it, whoever's at the edge of top 20 or top 30, I think these guys are going to be pretty motivated to want to show up for a couple of those pro motocross races and get some points and make those bids.
Okay, those are key names that you mentioned here. You've shown a chart that shows who's already in and riders who are on the verge are probably going to end up having enough points. Just highlight a few of those names, and a couple stick out to me.
Yeah, so the already in top 7, Eli Tomac, Cooper Webb, all the way down to Aaron Plessinger. Those guys are in. They've got 180 points plus, and I think they're a deadlock. There's an interesting group that sits right on the bubble of what I think will be the top 20. Christian Craig, AC9, Justin Hill, Dean Wilson. Those guys are there. Weege in particular, Justin Hill, Dean Wilson, kind of interesting scenarios given their plans for pro motocross or lack thereof.
Yeah, they're not planning on racing outdoors, and who would have thought they might not, but they've got to make sure they maximize the points haul in Supercross. So you might see Wilson or Hill, the difference between a 12th and a 16th at any given weekend, and they've been in that range all year. That could be the difference between them being in or out, because I don't think you're going to see them scoring points outdoors. Pretty wild.
All right, Clinton, so I asked you how to get to 20. You said you can get in also by being 21st to 30th. So get me to 30 then. What's the points range looking to get it to 30?
You take a look at the LCQ bubble, right? You look at the current points in the Supercross Championship. You look at 12th through 25th, guys, and I think there's some interesting stuff here. So in particular, 12th through 16th, you've got Joey Savacci all the way down to Shane McElrath. Those guys look like they're good to go or on pace for making the top 30. But there's some unique scenarios there, guys. Like a guy like Joey Savacci or Josh Hill. Again, they're in that boat of are they going to race or not in the Pro Motocross Series. But guys, the really interesting one for me, and I think maybe the last thing we can hit on here is 19th through 25th right now. Grant Harling sits with 46 points at 19th. If this was the low mark for making the top 30, he'd be the guy in 30th. But there's a lot of guys below. I mean, there's some names there that are doing really well in Supercross this year.
Well, thank you, Clinton. It's time we get into this stuff because every week that we get closer to Ironman, it's going to be that much more important. So it's good to understand it and start looking at where that 20 mark is, where that 30 mark is. So great stuff. And we will see you on Race Day Live this Saturday for another Fowler's Film Room.
Sure will. Looking forward to it, guys.
Time to wrap up this episode of SMX Insider. We're all headed to Glendale here, just outside of Phoenix. I'll be part of Race Day Live. I'll be announcing with the floor. Daniel, you're up in the TV booth. 4:30 Eastern Time. Race Day Live begins, and 10 o'clock Eastern.
Hi, folks. Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.